Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another of the Sofa Series Artist Spotlight. Today we have Zara Kuredjian, who is an interdisciplinary artist, like all of us. We all do a bit of everything, and she is an MFA candidate. Have you already? It is a candidacy, right?
Well, I
Yeah.
have like a month left, so
Oh,
we'll
what does it all
stay
mean
close.
anymore? So she's an MFA candidate with a month left to go at UCSD. Welcome!
Woo!
Yay! This is
Yay!
great. So,
Thank.
it's, yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry. I just want to say thanks for the introduction.
It was wonderful, wasn't it? It was
Yeah,
perfect.
it was great.
So tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, and how did you get to San Diego, or why San Diego? Why UCSD?
Well, I'm from Los Angeles. Um, I I grew up in I guess it's a an immigrant neighborhood in Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
of mostly like people who immigrated to Los Angeles after the Soviet Union basically plummeted. So it's a very particular community in LA that I came from. Um, I I came to San Diego for school, but I've been in the general region for some time, just going back and forth, mostly between the deserts and the cities. So
Mm-hmm.
I've I've been around Southern California quite a bit.
Why did you decide on UCSD?
I decided on UCSD. Um, I think for several reasons. One was I definitely had specific people in mind that I wanted to work with and to learn from, and that includes Anya Galaccio, Monique Van Genderen, Lisa Cartwright, Amy
Mm-hmm.
Handler, um, among many other faculty members. I was really interested in like this like grouping of people that are here. I think that was probably the biggest reason why I wanted to come to UC San Diego. But I was also interested um, like a being in a closer proximity to the border as well. I thought there
Mm-hmm.
was something important that I needed to think through as well. So I would say those are probably some of the more important things
Mm-hmm.
that I was thinking about at the time. And
It,
granted, it's also been like 3 years, so
and then this last quarter, like,
Whew,
mm.
yeah.
What is that like? How are you? Like, have you already done your thesis show? That happened like right before the virus kind of landed here in Southern California, right?
Yeah, it was kind of I was supposed to go well, I was supposed to go anywhere. I was supposed to install my thesis exhibition maybe like three between like the third and fourth week of the quarter.
Uh huh.
And things had already sort of gotten to a point where we were self isolating at home or staying at home. And um, so for me, I'm just going to have to postpone that and figure out, installing the work somewhere at a later date.
Mm-hmm.
Um, right now, what I'm doing is I'm doing a couple things. Like I'm trying to be generative in terms of like staying at home,
Mm-hmm.
um, both in terms of the thesis work itself and also um, trying to think beyond that as well. So doing a call and response with a friend, trying some new processes at home, um, working through a bunch of different like little projects, stuff that I
Mm-hmm.
can do. Um, that are physically not, you know, huge and won't destroy my apartment.
Right,
Yeah,
because a lot of your work involves some pretty heavy equipment
yeah,
and dirt, lots of it.
yes, yes.
What sorts of things? I guess you're kind of now going a little bit more micro. So, what sorts of things are you contemplating, thinking, creating now?
Well, actually, it was kind of strange because a little bit before all of this started to come about, the whole coronavirus crisis, maybe like 2 or 3 months before that, I was actually thinking of working through still lifes. So I'm the first thing I started doing when I was staying home was I just started carving fruit out of wax. Um, so that was like the first sort of impulse that I had was like, okay, well, I want to try and think through this idea. Um, the next thing I started to do, and I'm still, you know, I'm still sort of working out the kinks in terms of process, was I turned my apartment into a makeshift dark room, and I am working through these. I'm trying to think of how to say this. So I learned about a gelatin, a photosensitive gelatin that you can put on glass.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, basically you can make cyanotypes on glass. So
Oh,
it's a gelatin emulsion that you can put on glass, and then you can expose images. So
very
the
cool.
this second thing that I'm doing is I'm working through um, I'm working through images on my computer, altering the images in one way or another, um, and then I'm exposing those images on glass plates.
How? Wait, how though? Like, so I'm very like, but it's in the computer. How does it
Yeah.
get from there
Oh,
to the
sorry.
gel?
Well, I tried a few things. So based on what I have, because I don't have the equipment to like actually produce um like an enlarged negative.
Uh-huh.
So what I tried at first was, okay, like I could get really thin sheets of paper, print on them, soak them in oil, and then try with that, with a lot of sunlight for a longer period of time, and it sort of worked. It did something. It, like you could see the image, but it was blocking out too much light, so it didn't work the way that I wanted to. So then I um, I also had these, like, I guess they're sheets of plastic that
Uh-huh.
you can use either for screen printing or for like overhead projectors, and they're
Uh-huh.
completely transparent. So
Yeah.
I just printed on those and I tried again, and it works great. It works fine.
That's so great.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. That's amazing. I mean, how much space do you have in your place where you can like keep all of this goo and trays? And I mean, is your apartment just completely taken over?
No, actually, I turned the majority, like the main sort of living area.
Yeah.
It's a studio apartment, and it's only maybe it's less than 300 square feet.
Yeah.
It's quite small. Um, and I've turned the main living area into a photo studio for my sculptures
Uh-huh.
from for the thesis show, so that I can at least, you know, photograph them.
Yeah.
Um, Actually, this process doesn't take a lot of space because I use certain things, and then I compress everything. And I
Okay.
just put it away. Um, yeah, so actually it doesn't take up a ton of room, but I do use my window to expose the images. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's so very like like I don't know. It's just too clever. You're too clever, Zara. Uh, so I like this kind of this general impression that I get from diving through your website, which I've been doing for the last couple of months, to be honest. So there's so much there. Is that it's this like the micro and macro are kind of coexisting. That the as you get closer and closer and closer, you can and I can only just see it through images. I can just imagine what they're like to experience. So some of these installations seem very big, that seem to take up a lot of space, but that's all about like actual grains of sand, right? So can you talk a little bit about the one piece, of course, I'm thinking of is Another and Another, which I'm just like so moved by. I think it's so amazing. What where does all that sand come from? All that dirt? And, do you have like a dirt factory, or do you just go out with a shovel into the desert and get what you need? First of all, and then yeah, where was this installed? How did this piece come about?
Another and Another was installed in Northridge, California. So maybe about 30 or 45. I guess it depends on how far you are and how quickly you drive, but maybe like 30 to 45 minutes north of LA.
Hmm.
Um, it was installed in an almost square shaped room. The the sort of earth material that I had was um, it was the dimensions of a patch of dirt that my body could fit into. And what I did with that was um, I sifted it so that it has this like very sort of fine powdery quality to it. So when you walk into that space, basically like the door is open and you could enter, and um, there's this like really fine flat like floor of earth and four white walls. There's not really much that's in the space, but it's this like tactile quality of like physically stepping on that surface and feeling your foot sink into it a little bit. Um, because it's a fine sort of material, it also tends to billow a little bit, so you can smell it as well. In the corner of in one of the four corners of the room, there's a poem that I had written by using a push pen and pushing in little holes to make each of the letters. And it's a cyclical poem that you can read from either end first. Um, so you can start anywhere, really. You can start on either end of the corner and move to the other end.
Okay, so the way that did you actually like tape up the because your font for pushpin work is like quite immaculate.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
definitely, yeah.
You were gonna blow my freaking mind if you said you had freeformed that shit.
Nope,
Nope.
nope.
Okay. So you're not
I could,
superhuman.
I could try, but it would take me an exponentially longer period of time. That's yeah, that would I don't know. That would be really hard.
Real hard.
Yeah.
Where did you write the poem, or did you take it
Mhm.
from something else? Yeah, it's
I read it
beautiful.
myself.
Yeah, it's good. What I was trying, because the image of it is some of it seems really faded, and some of it is a little bit clearer to read. Was that intentional? Did part of it sort of, or did just part of it begin to kind of scuff away the legibility?
I think it wasn't necessarily that the wall was fading so much as there were different like densities in the wall, and you could see, I think, from the way that some of the holes are made, where like I don't know, like where I had struggled or where I had built up some resolve, or because it was all in one go. Like it wasn't like, I didn't take several days to do it. I just stood there for several hours on one day and was, trying to make these little holes
Mm-hmm.
to write a poem.
How did you decide on why the dimensions of a space that your body could fit into? Why that much dirt?
I think at the time, um, I think this was probably like 4 years ago. I was trying to think of like the things that I felt like were real to me, and like trying to find ways to connect to those things, like I know, at least for myself, that my connection to being here, whatever that means, at the time for me, it was a way of relating to the ground, and to think about this really personal, but like almost like a um, temporarily detached relationship, to the earth. Like I can step on it and I can be with it, and I'm here, but at the same time, like I'm here too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was one thing that at the time that I was thinking through, was like, what does it mean for me to be here? How can I relate to Earth, or to, the ground underneath me? You I think that was really important for me at the time.
I mean, does this question come back to you in some of your other works?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah. In
Um,
what ways? Like how else do you deconstruct or reconsider that question?
I think, more recently, I think it's become a little more abstract for me. I've definitely, um, at least over the past like 2 years, I've definitely taken a more abstract approach to thinking through, um, my relationship to, basically, to material, and um, to just being here. I think in terms of, let's say, like the work that I was producing for my thesis show, um, I very much had to deal with, limitations of my body, my ability to access, certain spaces, my relationship to depth and memory, um, to light, and, um, also to earth again, but in more, um, they're not so, it's not as easily, um, approached anymore. It's more abstract, I think, because what I'm getting at, it doesn't have a representational image. So I think that's something that I'm trying to approach within my practice as well. Is like, what is at the heart of this thing?
That's interesting. And so now there is representational image in your wax figures and kind of rethinking the still life. So, I mean, it's this sort of like age old, I forget who wrote it, like the five limitations. I think it comes from from theater, or for creating things for theater, is that if you can kind of work around limitations, then you can ask more questions, right? You can delve a little bit deeper into avenues that you maybe not would not have chosen before. And so in in doing these still lifes of the wax fruits, what are you exploring now? Are you exploring, yeah, just more open ended? What are you exploring through those?
I think so. I had a sculpture that well, I don't know if I would call it a sculpture. It's probably more of an installation than a sculpture. It was titled Someday. And basically, it's just like long um, concrete column that has like a little wax bowl on it. And I got, you know, in the wax bowl, there's this like small quantity of dirt that or earth that just sits in there.
Mm-hmm.
And like part of my thinking at the time was um, about this like slower like movement of material.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I had left the wax alone for a little while, because I was like, okay, well, if I make this wax object, um, and I just leave it for a really long time, what will happen?
Mm-hmm.
So in my home, I had these like little bits of wax that I had just sort of like left, and over time, just with gravity and heat and all of the sort of like things that would affect the wax, based on its environment, cause the wax to sort of flatten out. I really like this idea because in my mind I was like, well, like let's say for instance I look at a still life, for example, it's like it's almost like in that moment of like what is represented in that image, it doesn't. I, I I imagine it changing, but it doesn't and it does at the same time. Like the surface of that object of like the painting or the whatever it is that the image is on, it changes, but the the image itself, I don't know. Like it's just like push and pull for me that I really
Mm-hmm.
like, because I'm like, it does change, but it doesn't change, but it does change. Wait, is it gonna change? I don't know. And then like I'll watch I watch this show on, I think it's on YouTube, of this guy who's an art conservator. He mostly conserves paintings, and I find it fascinating because he like cleans the paintings, and he like he tries to bring them back to this like um original sort of like intention that the paintings
Yeah.
um came from.
Yeah.
So there is this sort of like environmental change within those objects, and like there is this push and pull between like will it change or will it not change.
Yeah.
And for me, this is sort of like thinking through the wax fruits for me is an interesting thing in the sense that they're I'm still sort of developing this for myself as well. It's a newer project for me, but
Mm-hmm.
um, the wax fruits are carved from original fruits, um, and at the same time, they have like an artifact from the original, piece of produce, the
Yes,
original fruit,
that is what they're
right?
called.
So I'm that's one thing that I've sort of been thinking about, was this relationship between that image and time.
Yeah, I kind of like, I mean, this is from my art history, very novice perspective, but I don't know. I kind of see, I mean, the still life, it is this intentional time capsule, right? That it's like, we are going to zoom on this little snapshot and we're seeing it through somebody's eyes via whatever their medium is, right? And so that you're using it's a still life of something that will decay, right? And so I don't know that it's this this question about about something living beyond you, your time on this earth. It's sort of this I don't know. It is already a question of time. It is already a piece that confronts time and that confronts decay and that confronts the end of something by encapsulating it. That's I guess how I think about it. But are you thinking about that, like those sorts of things, or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think um, one of the things, because this whole, um, I would say that this sort of newer set of investigations are, I think they shifted a little bit in terms of like having to stay home.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'd sort of been thinking through this project for, I don't know, close to about maybe three months now. It's just sort of been circulating in my head, but um, this like past month and month and change, really, like time has just sort of like collapsed on itself,
Yeah. Yeah.
and at the same time, like I feel like um, the still life in and of itself sort of, I guess it depends on what kind of still life, but in terms of like um just sort of like looking at a like an image of, I don't know, an apple or something, it does have this sort of like flattening or collapse of time, and I find that interesting. um Something that I'm thinking of working through a little bit over time is thinking through depth, memory, and flatness in terms of time as well. That's something that I, I haven't fully approached it yet. I'm still sort of like I feel like I know what the next sort of move is going to be, or the next investigation, but I feel like it's a really important. I think it's an important thing that I will likely investigate um,
Yeah.
in the next couple of weeks.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, we're all in this holding pattern, right? Everything has
Yeah.
just been pushed pause and we're just waiting. We're in eternal no exit, you know? We're in this French existentialist thing until whenever.
Yeah.
How do you, I guess, how do you decide on material? Like how did you come to these materials using, clay, using pottery, you've used earth, you've used water, like elemental things, wax. How did you get here?
I think um, I think it's a combination of like a couple of things. One is for sure like trying to find like a, like not a personal relationship to them necessarily so much as like a, in terms of like I don't know, like a, I don't know how to communicate this. So I guess the personal relationship for me is whether like how it relates to my body. For me, that's something that's really important. I I feel like between that and sort of being open to new materials and processes as well. Like for example, the material that I'm using in one of the um, bodies of work for my thesis exhibition that got canceled was just a zinc alloy. And so I was making these um, columns um, that are about, most of them are about 5 feet tall. Um, and they but they're, other than this like initial project, I had never used zinc before. But I was interested in this sort of um, the sort of like liquidity of it, and the its like ability to cool relatively quickly as well. Um, um, and for me, like being open to that, or being open to, I don't know, gelatin. I think like I think yeah, I think, but like not being it's not that like, yeah, I think for me, like it's like a relationship to my body, but not in like a, not in like a singular sense. I think things that I seek out, in terms of like seeking this relationship to material, has a lot to do with um, liquidity, or sort of like the fluid nature of material, um, as opposed to like a hard, um, or stable, entity. So a lot of the work that I produce has that quality to it, where um, it sort of suggests this sort of movement of material, or changing of material in some way.
I see. I see. How did you? I guess were you always just a kid who ate dirt and was always asking how does that work? Were you the kid who takes radios apart and puts them back together? Everything the everything that you say to me just kind of has this in not to be so diminutive, but it's very it seems like a very like childlike or childish. Sorry if that's really like
That's a
mean.
compliment.
Okay, good.
Compliment. I think that's great.
Then there just seems to be the endless lines of inquiry, and you just you're so curious. So how, I mean, did you start in something that was maybe a little bit more more standard, like photography? People have an idea of what photography is. People have an idea of what's drawing and painting, and then you kind of morphed into more materials studies. And how did that work for you?
Well, I think for me, um, I kind of had a, I I think, actually, like if I can go back like a little over a decade.
Let's do a deep
um,
dive.
yeah. So when I first started to think about, like, okay, well, like what am I like really interested in? Like, what is fascinating to me? I actually I was studying math for a really long time, for like a few years, in school, and to me it was like this like really magical experience of like wondering about the world, and like what I think about that, and how, you know how math, or mathematics, could deal with that. And for me, it was like, it wasn't really a process of like knowing or acting like I knew the world around me, so much as really like positioning myself in a way where I felt like I didn't know the world, and that I really wanted um, to explore it, and to think about it, and to think about, like, oh well, I'm here, and like, what is all this stuff? Like, it's really, I think it really opens up the world around me in that sort of like childish way, where I'm just like constantly like, oh well, actually, I have no idea what I have no idea. I would rather be the person that says I don't know anything at all, than
Yeah,
to say that I know things. And
yeah.
for me, that, I feel like if I did know, um my practice, and I did know, art, and exactly what I was going to make, I wouldn't be an artist. I would do something else where I didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that the act of not knowing, the act of like being present and open, I think that for me that's a really big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've been doing that for a very long time.
When did you decide to go into art though? Like what was the absolute turning point for you from mathematics to making things?
It was more of a gradual shift, I think.
Yeah.
I went from mathematics to um, um, finding like a deep sort of fascination with um, physics and architecture,
Mm-hmm.
and then going from physics and architecture to sculpture, and then from there just sort of um, staying in that sort of art realm. I think for me, um, personally, art is a very, for me, it's a very open thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like there's a lot that I could explore with that. Um, yeah,
Almost too much, right?
yeah,
You got your
yeah,
whole life.
yeah.
Sorry, what were you gonna say?
I honestly I don't remember
Oh,
anything
okay,
else.
great.
I think it was a like a fleeting thought, and then it just sort of, just
Shit.
yeah.
We lost what was going to be like such a brilliant soundbite, I'm sure. Because that's all that matters now. Oh man. But what is now that you are, I guess, graduating? Are you gonna actually walk, or are they? How is the school even handling all of that at the end of this quarter? And what is next for you then? Now you have to kind of answer that question.
I don't know. I think
Great
that's my
answer. That's my
answer.
favorite
I
answer.
just don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough time and a tough situation, and I think that the university has handled it like quite responsibly, and
I agree. Yeah.
I whatever the sort of end of my time here becomes, I think it'll be okay. I think things will be all right. Um, I think some decisions are being made by um, um, are in the hands of like good people who care. So I think it'll be okay.
Are you feeling optimistic that the world, I mean, I'm kind of taking this in. I think we were talking earlier about the first major life event for some of us was 9/11. For me, even back further, it was that watching the LA riots. That was a big like
Mhm.
shake up to my own system, and trying to understand and unpack um, what is it what happened that things got to this, and so in kind of, yeah, I don't know, and kind of seeing this unfold before our very eyes and being in the middle of it, like, it's hard to see the forest for the trees, of course, but I'd like to think that the world is forever changed, and hopefully for the better. That the thinkers out there will kind of help us to move things forward, and that the global societal shifts will start to kind of like maybe unravel, but then rebuild into something that is maybe a little bit more optimistic. Are you feeling a little optimism in this, or is it all just sort of bleak despair, or a little bit of both? Some from column
Well,
A.
I don't know. Um, I think that when I have optimism, I
Yeah.
think that when major events like this, well, yeah, I think when like a major social event or occurrence happens, I think that it at least for me, like it reminds me of the things that are important to me. The people that are important to me, um, the the it reminds me of like how important like community is to me, and that can be like a very abstract thing, especially now with like having to stay home. Like I'm completely alone, at home. But for me, it's not. I don't have to physically be near the people that I care about to show them or to care about them. It's the actions that I take in context to that, I think, that are really important. And um yeah, it's just I I just keep remembering and thinking about like, okay, well, what can I do to help my community, my neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
my family members, my friends and chosen
Mm-hmm.
family, and all of this, like all these people that I really care about. Like, what can I do for them, and what can I do um, to try and show some form of solidarity, because we're all in it together. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the big sort of struggle, is like, how can you be alone and be together at the same
At the
time? Like,
exact same time.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, yeah, I'm very optimistic about certain things that are happening, like people actually being there for each other by staying at home. Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a big deal.
It's a
you know
powerful act to decide that for the collective good that you're going to make sacrifices, like not going out to a coffee shop every day, but still supporting the coffee shop by buying their beans, finding different ways to engage in your world. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. It is definitely like shifting the focus into what really and truly is important. And I hope the world is forever changed for the better. Hope.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, like, we'll never
Yeah.
know, what's gonna happen in, I don't know, like, at least for me, like, I don't think I will know what is gonna happen in like the next year or 2 years, or
Sure.
however many years in the future. But I think there are things um, that we can hold on to, that are really meaningful. I think that um, focusing on those elements is really, um, I, I think, it gives us something to hold on to.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for talking with us. I think that's a lovely, beautiful, uplifting way to end this conversation, which I've thoroughly enjoyed. So, thank you for taking the time to chat with me about your practice and all about you. I hope it wasn't too painful.
No, this was great.
Cool.
Thanks for inviting me, and for talking with me.
My
This was
pleasure.
awesome.
All right. Stay well and hope to see you soon. Okay. Bye.